The first punch shattered against Maggie Thornton's jaw at 0200 hours. Blood filled her mouth. Her gray hair ripped loose as Senior Chief Kane slammed her skull into concrete. "Scream for me, Grandma!" 3 more SEALs closed in, blocking every exit. She was 54 years old. A janitor. Invisible. They had no idea that the woman they were about to beat to death had killed more men than all of them combined, that she'd carried dying operators through enemy fire, that in exactly 47 seconds she would break Kane's arm in 3 places and change the history of naval special warfare forever. If you want to see how this satisfying unfolds, subscribe to our channel and stay until the very end. Drop a comment telling us which city you're watching from. We love seeing how far these stories travel. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as Margaret Thornton's back hit the wall. The impact knocked the breath from her lungs. Her mop handle cracked against the equipment room floor, spinning away into darkness. Senior Chief Marcus Kane leaned in close. His breath stank of whiskey and arrogance. Behind him, 3 other instructors formed a wall of muscle and contempt. "I asked you a question, Grandma." Kane's voice dripped with contempt. "You've been cleaning these heads for, 8 years, and you still can't get the piss stains off the urinals." Maggie kept her eyes down. Her voice came out small, trembling. "I'm sorry, Senior Chief. I'll do better." "Damn right you will." Petty Officer Derek Santos stepped forward. 28 years old, neck tattoos barely visible above his collar. The kind of man who'd grown up proving himself with his fists before the Navy gave him a better outlet. "Kane, come on. She's just some old lady." "Old lady taking a job from a military wife." Kane didn't release the pressure on Maggie's throat. "You know how many families on this base could use the money she's stealing? Lieutenant, junior grade?" Peter Garrison laughed. 32, son of an admiral, never failed at anything because he'd never been truly tested. "Maybe she's got nowhere else to go. Look at her. Who'd hire that?" Maggie's hands hung at her sides. Loose, unthreatening. Her eyes stayed fixed on the floor, counting the cracks in the concrete, noting the positions of all 4 men, without appearing to notice anything at all. 8 years. She'd been invisible in this building for 8 years. Kane finally released her. He stepped back, wiping his hands on his pants like he'd touched something dirty. "Clean this room again. And if I find 1 speck of dust tomorrow, you're gone. I know people in HR. 1 word from me and you're back on the street where you belong." The 4 men walked out laughing. The door slammed behind them. Maggie stood motionless for a long moment. Then she bent down, picked up her mop, and resumed cleaning, but her hands weren't shaking anymore. The thing about being invisible is that people tell you things they'd never say out loud if they remembered you were there. Maggie had learned more about the inner workings of Naval Special Warfare Command by emptying trash cans than most intelligence analysts learned in a career. She knew which instructors were struggling with their marriages. She knew which candidates were being quietly flagged for mental health concerns. She knew about the investigation into missing equipment that everyone thought was secret. She also knew that Senior Chief Marcus Kane had been building towards something for months. The harassment had started small. Coffee spilled on freshly mopped floors, equipment hidden just before she needed it, notes left on her locker. "Go home." Grandma written in block letters. "Civilians don't belong here." Maggie had reported nothing. She'd said nothing. She'd simply cleaned up each mess and moved on to the next task. But she'd been watching, learning, remembering, and she'd recognized something in Kane that most people missed, the desperate need to prove himself against anyone he perceived as weak. The rage that lived just beneath the surface, the pattern of behavior that said this wouldn't stop until it escalated beyond recovery. She'd seen men like him before, in places she couldn't name, doing things she couldn't describe. The next morning, Maggie arrived at 500 hours as always. The Naval Special Warfare Training Center was already alive with activity. Buds candidates ran past in formation, their voices hoarse from days of controlled suffering. Instructors barked orders that echoed off concrete and steel. Nobody looked at the small woman in the gray coveralls pushing a cleaning cart. That was the point. Master Chief Frank Morrison intercepted her near the administrative building. 60 years old, thick through the chest and shoulders eyes that held the cold calculation of a man who'd spent decades learning exactly how much pain he could inflict without leaving evidence. "Thornton." Maggie stopped her cart. "Master Chief." Morrison moved closer. He had that look on his face, the one that said he was enjoying something nobody else understood yet. "I hear you had some trouble last night, with Kane and his boys." "Just a misunderstanding, Master Chief. My fault. I should have cleaned better." "That's so." Morrison's lips curled into something that wasn't quite a smile. "Kane seems to think you got an attitude problem. Says you gave him a look." Maggie kept her eyes down. "I apologize if he felt that way. It wasn't intentional." "See, here's what I'm wondering." Morrison leaned against her cart, forcing her to look up at him. "I've been at this base 6 months. And in that time, I've noticed something about you. You're always around, always watching, always in places where interesting things happen." "I clean, Master Chief. That's my job. I go where the work is." "Do you?" It wasn't a question. "Because I spent some time looking into your background. HR files pretty thin. Previous employment, not much detail. References that don't quite check out. Almost like somebody created a cover story and didn't put much effort into it." Maggie's pulse didn't change. Her breathing stayed steady. But deep inside, in a place she'd learned to wall off years ago, something shifted. "I'm just a janitor, Master Chief. Not much to tell." Morrison studied her face for a long moment. Then he pushed off her cart and walked away without another word. Maggie watched him go. She recognized him now. Not personally, she'd never met him before this posting, but she recognized the type. The man who'd built a career on making sure certain people never advanced. The man who saw women in military spaces as a personal insult. The man who'd rather burn down the institution than watch it change. She'd known men like him in places that didn't officially exist. Some of them were buried in those places now. That evening, Maggie drove her 15-year-old Honda Civic to a cemetery on the outskirts of San Diego. The sun was setting, painting the headstones in shades of orange and gold. She walked slowly through the rows until she reached a simple marker near the back. Rachel Marie Hayes, Lieutenant Commander, United States Navy, 1970, 2003. Beloved mother warrior sister. Maggie knelt and placed a small bouquet of wildflowers against the stone. "They're getting worse, Rach." Her voice was quiet, meant only for the dead. "The new Master Chief Morrison he's been poking around, asking questions, and Kane's crew they're building towards something. I can feel it." The wind rustled through the grass. Somewhere in the distance, a car door slammed. "I've been thinking about what you'd say. You always said I was too patient, that I let things build too long before I acted. Maybe you were right." She touched the headstone gently. Her fingers traced the carved letters of Rachel's name. "Your daughter's applying for the program. Did you know that, Sarah? She's 24 now. Looks just like you. Has that same fire in her eyes. I've been watching her from a distance. Haven't introduced myself yet. Wasn't sure if I had the right." Maggie was silent for a long moment. "I don't know how much longer I can stay invisible, Rach. I'm tired. 54 years old, and I'm tired of pretending to be something small. But the mission was always the same, right? Protect the next generation. Make sure they have opportunities we never had." She stood slowly, her knees protesting the movement. "I'll figure it out. I always do. Say hi to Callahan for me. Tell her I'm sorry I couldn't carry her far enough." Maggie walked back to her car as darkness settled over the cemetery. She didn't notice the black SUV parked 3 rows away. She didn't see Master Chief Morrison behind the wheel taking photos, taking notes, adding pieces to a puzzle he didn't yet understand. Chapter 1. 33 years earlier, a different version of Maggie stood in a garage in Virginia Beach while rain hammered the roof and 4 old warriors taught her how to survive. She was 21 years old. Her father had been dead for 5 years. Master Chief William Thornton, United States Navy, had served with SEAL Team 2 from 1965 to 1982. 3 combat tours in Vietnam. More operations than anyone would ever acknowledge. He'd died during a training exercise in 1988, a helicopter crash that killed him and 3 other operators in what was officially listed as an accident. Maggie had never believed it was an accident. The timing was too convenient. Her father had been asking questions about things that powerful people wanted forgotten. And then he was gone. But before he died, he'd made arrangements. 4 of his closest teammates, men who'd bled with him in the Mekong Delta, men who'd carried him out of firefights, men who trusted him with their lives and he with theirs, had promised to watch over his daughter. They kept that promise. Chief Petty Officer Samuel Reeves had been the first to reach out. 58 years old, retired after 30 years of service, he showed up at Maggie's apartment 3 months after the funeral. "Your father was the best operator I ever served with," Reeves said, standing in her doorway. "He asked us to make sure you were taken care of. So here I am. I don't need taking care of." "Didn't say you did. Said we were supposed to make sure." Reeves studied her with eyes that had seen everything worth seeing and plenty that wasn't. "You got his eyes, you know. Same look he'd get when he was about to do something stupid and brave. What do you want? To teach you what he would have taught you if he'd had the time." Maggie had said no. She'd said no for 3 months. Then she'd walked into that garage in Virginia Beach, and everything changed. The 4 men who trained her had 60 years of combined special operations experience. Chief Reeves taught her close quarters combat. Not the sanitized version they taught in dojos, but the brutal, efficient methodology that kept operators alive in spaces where hesitation meant death. "You're never going to be bigger than them," Reeves said during one of their first sessions. "Never going to be stronger. So you're going to be faster, smarter, more technically precise than anyone they've ever faced." He demonstrated a wrist release, breaking her grip, with a movement so subtle she almost missed it. Every technique has a counter. Every counter has a counter-counter. You learn them all, and then you learn to read which one to use before your opponent knows what they're doing. Senior Chief James Watkins taught her weapons. Pistol rifle, everything in between. He'd been a sniper in Vietnam, one of the quiet professionals who did their work from distances that made the killing feel almost abstract. "Shooting is breathing," Watkins said, adjusting her stance on the private range they used for training. "Breathe in, breathe out, shoot between heartbeats. Your body becomes the platform, steady, stable, calm. And if I'm not calm, then you make yourself calm. Fear is a choice. Panic is a luxury. You don't get either." Master Chief Donald Webb taught her tactics. How to read terrain plan operations, anticipate enemy movements. He'd been one of the first SEALs to operate in the Mekong Delta, running missions that were still classified 40 years later. "Combat is chaos," Webb said, spreading maps across the garage floor. "Your job is to create order within that chaos, not for the enemy, for yourself. You know what you're going to do before the first shot is fired. They're reacting. You're executing. What if the plan falls apart? Plans always fall apart. That's why you have contingencies. And contingencies for your contingencies. And when all of those fail, you improvise. But improvisation built on a foundation of training beats improvisation built on hope. And Captain Marcus Stone, the oldest of them at 67, taught her the most important skill of all. "You can learn to fight," Stone said during a quiet moment between training sessions. "You can learn to shoot. You can learn tactics. But none of it matters if you can't do the one thing that separates operators from soldiers." "What's that? Disappear?" Stone's eyes held the weight of decades of secrets. Become invisible. Be so unremarkable that people forget you exist. And then when the moment comes, become the most remarkable thing they've ever seen. He leaned forward. Your father understood this. He could walk into any room in the world and either own it or vanish into the wallpaper. He chose which version of himself to present based on what the mission required. That's what made him special. That's what we're going to teach you. For 6 years, Maggie trained with these men. 3 times a week, sometimes more. She finished college. She joined the Navy. She served in unremarkable billets, building a service record that was deliberately mediocre. And she waited. In 1995, the call finally came. The recruiter found her at Naval Station Norfolk, where she was working as an administrative specialist. Unremarkable rating. Unremarkable performance. Unremarkable in every way that showed up on paper. The recruiter was a woman. That was the first surprise. "Petty Officer Thornton, I'm Lieutenant Commander Catherine Cross. Do you have a few minutes?" They walked to a private conference room. Cross closed the door and activated a white noise generator that Maggie recognized from her years of training with men who valued secrecy above almost everything. "What I'm about to tell you is classified at the highest levels. Your response to this conversation will be monitored. Any disclosure of its contents will result in prosecution under the Espionage Act. Do you understand?" "Yes, ma'am." The Department of Defense is initiating a pilot program, highly experimental, extremely classified. We're looking for women with specific skill sets to participate in special operations in environments where male operators cannot effectively operate. Maggie kept her face neutral. What kind of environments? Populations that restrict male access, cultural contexts where women can build relationships that men cannot, medical scenarios where female patients require female providers, intelligence gathering in spaces that are invisible to male operatives. You're training female SEALs. Cross didn't blink. We're training female special operators. The designation is classified. The program is called Operation Siren. Selection begins in 3 months at a location I can't disclose. 30 candidates will be invited. Based on your background, your real background, not the cover story in your service record, you're on the list. Maggie felt something shift in her chest. The years of training, the years of waiting, the promise she'd made at her father's grave. What real background? Cross allowed herself a small smile. Petty Officer Thornton, we've been watching you since you were 17 years old. We know about the garage in Virginia Beach. We know about Reeves, Watkins, Webb, and Stone. We know they spent 6 years preparing you for exactly this conversation. If you knew, why did you wait so long? Because you weren't ready, and because the program wasn't ready. Both conditions have now been met. Cross slid a folder across the table. Selection begins June 1st. Transportation will be arranged. All you have to do is say yes. Maggie looked at the folder. Inside was a single sheet of paper with coordinates, a date, and a reporting time. Nothing else. No details. No explanation. No promises. Just an invitation to become something that didn't officially exist. I'm in. Selection broke 24 women in the first week. The location was a black site in the Nevada desert. No identifying markers. No communication with the outside world. No indication that the place existed on any map. 30 women arrived. They came from every branch of service. Infantry, intelligence, medical aviation. The youngest was 22. The oldest was 34. They had nothing in common except the willingness to suffer for something they believed in. The instructors were legends. SEAL Team 6 operators, Delta Force shooters, CIA paramilitary officers, men who'd spent their careers in the shadows doing things their country would never acknowledge. And they held nothing back. "This is not summer camp," the lead instructor announced on day 1. "This is not diversity training. This is not a political statement. You are here because someone believes you might have what it takes to operate at a level that 99% of special operators never reach. Most of you will not. Most of you will quit, fail, or break. The 6 who remain will be weapons that this country has never possessed." 6 out of 30. For the next 8 months, we will test every aspect of your physical capability, your mental resilience, and your operational potential. We will push you past every limit you think you have, and then push you further. We will teach you skills that don't exist in any manual techniques that have never been documented, and methodologies that will remain classified long after everyone in this room is dead. He paused. Any questions? Nobody spoke. Nobody dared. Good. PT starts in 5 minutes. Welcome to hell. Maggie survived the first week on sheer stubbornness. The physical training was brutal. 12-hour days of running, swimming, climbing, carrying, log PT that left her shoulders bleeding, surf torture in water cold enough to shut down rational thought, sand in every crevice of her body, a constant grinding reminder that comfort was a privilege she hadn't earned. But the physical suffering was almost a relief. At least it was honest. At least it was simple. The psychological pressure was worse. Instructors woke them at random hours for harassment. They created artificial stress situations, interpersonal conflicts, impossible ethical dilemmas. They tested not just whether the candidates could perform, but whether they could think clearly while being systematically dismantled. On day 3, Maggie found herself in an interrogation room with 2 instructors who took turns screaming in her face. "You don't belong here. You're taking a slot from someone who actually deserves it. Women can't operate at this level. You're going to get someone killed. Your father was a failure. He died because he wasn't good enough. And you're going to die the same way." That one hit different. Maggie felt the rage rise in her chest, felt her hands start to tremble, felt all the grief and anger she'd carried since she was 16 years old, threatening to break through the walls she'd built around it. The instructors saw it. They smiled. "There it is. There's the weakness. You can't control your emotions. You'll compromise the mission. You'll get your teammates killed. Just like Daddy." Maggie closed her eyes. She thought about the garage in Virginia Beach, about Reeves teaching her to breathe through pain, about Stone teaching her to disappear. When she opened her eyes, her voice was steady. "My father was Master Chief William Thornton. He served 30 years in the teams. He died with honor. And his legacy is why I'm sitting in this chair." The instructors exchanged glances. Is that so? That's so. You want to break me? You're going to have to try harder than insults. I've been preparing for this conversation since I was 16 years old. Silence stretched through the room. Then one of the instructors made a note on his clipboard. Get back to training. Week 4 brought the first real casualties. Not physical injuries, though there were plenty of those, but the breaks that happened when women who'd spent their whole lives being told they were strong finally encountered something they couldn't overcome. Lieutenant Maria Castillo, Army intelligence, quit during a water confidence exercise. She'd been held underwater until she panicked, until her body's survival instincts overpowered her conscious mind. When they pulled her out, she was sobbing. I can't, she kept saying. I can't do this. She was gone within the hour. No ceremony, no farewell. Just an empty bunk where a warrior used to be. Petty Officer 2nd Class Jennifer Walsh. Navy corpsman broke during the resistance training. The interrogation went too far, too real. Something in her mind snapped and didn't snap back. She was evacuated for psychological evaluation. Maggie never found out what happened to her after that. And Chief Petty Officer Andrea Stone, no relation to Marcus Stone, who'd trained Maggie, simply walked out during a nightland navigation exercise. No explanation. No warning. She just stopped moving, sat down in the sand, and refused to continue. The instructors found her 2 hours later, still sitting, staring at the stars. I wanted to be exceptional, she said when they asked why. But I'm not. I'm just good. And good isn't enough for what you're asking. By week 8-15, women remained. Half the original class hanging on by fingernails and stubborn refusal to quit. That was when Maggie met Rachel Hayes. Lieutenant Commander Rachel Hayes was 31 years old. Navy helicopter pilot, decorated combat veteran, single mother to a 3-year-old daughter named Sarah. She shouldn't have been there. By any reasonable standard, she had too much to lose, too many responsibilities, too many reasons to take the safe path. But Rachel Hayes had never taken the safe path. My ex-husband tells everyone I'm selfish, she said during one of their rare moments of rest. They were sitting outside the barracks, watching the desert sunset paint the sky in impossible colors. Says I care more about my career than my daughter. Do you? Rachel was quiet for a moment. I think about Sarah every single day. Every time things get hard here, I think about her smile, her laugh, the way she says "mommy" when I come home. So why are you here? Because she's going to grow up in a world where someone has to protect her. And I want that someone to be me. I want her to know that her mother wasn't afraid to sacrifice for something bigger than herself. Rachel looked at Maggie. That's not selfish. That's love. From that moment they were partners, swim buddies, battle brothers, even though neither was a brother. They pushed each other through the worst moments and celebrated the small victories that kept them moving forward. Rachel was everything Maggie wasn't. Outgoing where Maggie was reserved, emotional where Maggie was controlled, instinctive where Maggie was analytical. Together, they were unstoppable. Week 20 brought the mission training. If selection was about breaking them down, mission training was about building them back up, teaching them the skills that would make them unique among all the special operators in the world. Close quarters combat went beyond anything Maggie had learned in the garage. Israeli Krav Maga experts, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu champions, Olympic-level judoka, the program brought in the best fighters in the world to teach techniques that had never been systematized. You have to be able to defeat men who are bigger, stronger, and better trained, the lead combatives instructor said. Not by matching their strength, by negating it, by understanding how human bodies work and exploiting weaknesses they don't know they have. Maggie absorbed everything. Her years of training with Reeves made her a quick study. But she also learned things that made her question everything she thought she knew. There were techniques for fighting in confined spaces where traditional martial arts fell apart. Techniques for using an attacker's momentum to create opportunities. Techniques for incapacitating opponents so quickly they didn't understand what was happening until they were already down. And there were techniques for killing. Quick, silent, efficient. The kind of skills that weren't taught in any official curriculum, because officially, they didn't exist. Week 30 brought the integrated training exercise, 72 hours of sustained operations, everything they'd learned combined into a single, impossible test. Maggie's partner was Rachel. Of course. They were given coordinates, minimal equipment, and instructions that were deliberately vague. Navigate to multiple objectives, conduct reconnaissance, execute a direct action mission, provide trauma care to simulated casualties, evade a hunter force, extract to a designated point. For 68 hours, everything went according to plan. They moved through the Nevada desert like ghosts. They gathered intelligence without being detected. They hit their target building with precision that would have impressed their most demanding instructors. And then, at hour 68, Rachel landed wrong, coming off a rope obstacle. The crack of her ankle breaking was audible across the training area. "Go!" Rachel gasped, her face gray with pain. "Complete the mission. I'll wait for extraction." "No. That's an order, Petty Officer. With respect, ma'am, I'm not leaving you. We finish together, or we don't finish." Maggie fashioned a splint from materials in her pack. She gave Rachel an improvised crutch. And then she picked her up in a fireman's carry. 8 miles through desert terrain, carrying 135 pounds of soldier gear and weapons. Evading a hunter force with thermal optics and superior numbers. Maggie drew on everything she'd ever learned. Every lesson from Reeves-Watkins Webb and Stone, every technique from 8 months of training, every ounce of stubbornness she'd inherited from her father. They reached the extraction point with 18 minutes to spare. The lead instructor found them collapsed in the sand, exhausted beyond description, but mission complete. "First time anyone's carried a casualty the full distance," he said. "Most people call the safety abort. You could have left her. You chose not to. Operators don't leave partners behind." The instructor nodded slowly. "No, they don't." Graduation day. 12 women stood in formation. 12 out of 30 who'd started. 25% completion rate, the same as the most elite special operations programs in the world. Lieutenant Commander Catherine Cross, now Colonel Cross, administered the oath. The ceremony was private. No cameras, no press, no official record. "You are weapons the enemy will never see coming," Cross said. "Invisible until necessary. Undeniable when revealed. You don't exist on paper, but you exist where it matters." Then came the tattoo ceremony. One by one, each woman received a small trident on her inner right ankle. The same design worn by SEALs, but in a location no one would think to look. A mark of completion, of capability, of belonging to something that officially never happened. Maggie sat in the chair and watched the needle work. The pain was nothing compared to what she'd survived. When it was done, she looked at Rachel. Rachel looked back. "Sisters," Rachel said. "Forever." They had no idea how short forever would be. The operations began immediately. Maggie and Rachel were deployed together more often than not. Afghanistan, Iraq, Yemen, Syria. Places where male operators couldn't gain access. Populations that wouldn't speak to men, but would speak to women. Maggie conducted village operations in Kandahar province, building networks of female informants who provided intelligence about Taliban movements. She ran medical missions in areas where American presence was officially denied. She tracked high-value targets by developing relationships with their wives, sisters, mothers, women, who knew everything but would never tell a male interrogator. The work was dangerous, exhausting, and absolutely essential. Intelligence she gathered led to the capture of terrorist leaders. Medical care she provided saved civilian lives and built goodwill that made populations more cooperative. Relationships she developed provided early warnings about attacks that saved American soldiers. She was good at it. Was better than good. And she was doing exactly what her father would have wanted her to do. The operation in Baghdad started like any other. March 2003. American aid workers held by insurgent remnants. Intelligence indicated they were being moved. Window of opportunity closing fast. Maggie's element was providing outer security and preparing to conduct immediate medical treatment on freed hostages. Delta operators would handle the breach. Siren operators would handle the aftermath. Rachel was positioned 20 meters away, covering a secondary avenue of approach. The breach went perfectly. Delta hit the compound at 0300 hours, cleared it in 90 seconds, secured the hostages. Maggie's element moved forward to begin casualty care. That's when the secondary IED detonated. Command wire initiated. Someone watching from a distance, waiting for the perfect moment. The explosion flipped the armored vehicle Rachel was using for cover. The secondary fragmentation turned the air into a kill zone. Maggie was running before she consciously decided to move, pulling open the damaged door, dragging people out. The first two were injured, but alive. The third was Rachel. She was still conscious when Maggie reached her, but the injuries were catastrophic. Fragmentation through the torso, internal bleeding that no field medicine could address. "Maggie." Rachel's voice was barely a whisper, blood on her lips, recognition in her eyes. "Don't talk. Save your strength. Medevac's coming." "Tell Sarah." Rachel grabbed Maggie's arm with surprising strength. "Tell her I was doing something important." "You're going to tell her yourself. Stay with me. Tell her I loved her. Tell her I died for something that mattered." Rachel's eyes lost focus. Her grip loosened. Maggie held her anyway, applied pressure to wounds that were bleeding too fast, called for medevac that would arrive too late. She felt the moment Rachel's heart stopped. That terrible stillness that separated the living from the dead. The medics had to physically pull her away. 2 years later, Operation Siren was dissolved. Political pressure. Budget cuts. A congressional oversight committee asking questions about classified programs and black budget spending. A senator who believed women didn't belong in combat roles, demanding detailed accounting for every dollar spent. The Pentagon made the calculation. Siren was too controversial to defend publicly, too classified to defend effectively. The order came down in October 2005. All 12 graduates would be reassigned to conventional billets. Service records would be sanitized. Mission files would be destroyed. For official purposes, Operation Siren had never existed. Maggie took it hard. Not the dissolution itself, but what it represented. The acknowledgement that politics mattered more than capability, that perception mattered more than performance. They'd proven the concept worked. They'd conducted successful missions. They'd saved American lives. And none of it mattered. She could have done anything, gone anywhere, started over. Instead, she applied for a civilian position at the Naval Special Warfare Training Center in Coronado. Night shift janitor. The interview was perfunctory. The background check was superficial. Nobody questioned why a woman with her qualifications would want to spend her nights mopping floors. She started in 2016, 54 years old. Gray hair starting to show. Wrinkles around her eyes. Invisible. For 8 years, she cleaned. She watched. She listened. She saw young women attempting Bud S. failing, not because they lacked capability, but because the institution wasn't ready for them. She saw instructors who believed their job was to break people rather than build them. She saw the slow, painful evolution of an organization that was finally being forced to change. And she waited for what she wasn't entirely sure, until Senior Chief Marcus Kane slammed her against a wall at 0200 hours, and everything she'd been waiting for began to crystallize into purpose. 3 days after the incident in the equipment room, Maggie received a visitor at her small apartment off base. The knock came at 1900 hours, soft but insistent. She opened the door to find a young woman standing on her doorstep, 24 years old, brown hair, brown eyes, a face that sent a knife through Maggie's heart. She looked exactly like Rachel. "Mrs. Thornton." The young woman's voice was hesitant, hopeful. "My name is Sarah Hayes. I think you knew my mother." Maggie couldn't speak. 20 years of grief, 20 years of guilt, 20 years of watching this girl grow up from a distance, all of it crashed into her at once. "I found letters," Sarah continued. "After my grandmother died last year, letters my mother wrote before her last deployment. She mentioned someone named Maggie, someone she called her sister." Sarah held up a photograph. It showed 2 women in desert camouflage arms around each other's shoulders, grinning at the camera like they owned the world. Maggie and Rachel, Baghdad, 2 weeks before the explosion. "Is this you?" Sarah asked. "Are you the one she wrote about?" Maggie looked at the photograph, at Rachel's smile, at the younger version of herself, who still believed she could protect everyone she loved. "Yes," she whispered. "I'm her." Sarah's eyes filled with tears. "Then I need your help. I just got accepted to the first official female SEAL assessment program, and I have no idea what I'm doing." Maggie stared at the daughter of her dead partner. The daughter Rachel had asked her to protect. The daughter who was about to walk into the same fire that had consumed her mother. And somewhere deep inside, in a place she'd thought was dead, something began to wake up. "Come inside," Maggie said. "We have a lot to talk about." Sarah Hayes sat across from Maggie at the small kitchen table, her hands wrapped around a cup of coffee that had gone cold 20 minutes ago. She hadn't touched it. She'd been too busy listening. "My mother never told me any of this," Sarah said, her voice barely above a whisper. "She said she was a helicopter pilot. That's it. Just a pilot. That's what she was supposed to say. That's what we were all supposed to say. But these letters..." Sarah pulled the worn envelope from her bag. "She wrote about missions, about you, about something called Siren. She said if anything happened to her, I should find you, that you'd know what to do." Maggie took the envelope with trembling fingers. Rachel's handwriting. After all these years, she'd recognize it anywhere. "Why didn't you come sooner?" "I didn't know you existed until 6 months ago. My grandmother kept these hidden. I think she was trying to protect me." Sarah leaned forward. "Mrs. Thornton, I need to understand. What was my mother really doing when she died?" Maggie closed her eyes. 20 years of silence. 20 years of carrying this weight alone. "She was saving lives," Maggie finally said. "She was doing exactly what she was trained to do, and she was the bravest person I've ever known." "Then why is there no record? I've searched everywhere. Her service file says she died in a training accident. A training accident. Like she tripped and fell. The bitterness in Sarah's voice cut deep. Because people in power decided that what we did was too controversial, too complicated. Easier to pretend we never existed than to explain why women were doing things women weren't supposed to do. Sarah's jaw tightened. That's why I'm doing this. The assessment program. I want to finish what she started. Sarah, listen to me. Maggie reached across the table and gripped the young woman's hand. What you're walking into isn't just physically demanding. The institution will fight you every step of the way. There are men who will try to break you not because you're weak, but because your success threatens everything they believe about themselves. I know. Do you? Because I've spent the last 8 years watching women attempt what you're about to attempt. I've seen them fail, not because they couldn't do the work, but because the system is designed to make them fail. Sarah didn't flinch. Then teach me how to beat the system? Maggie studied Rachel's daughter. The same fire, the same stubborn determination, the same willingness to walk into hell with her eyes wide open. Your mother asked me to protect you, right before she died. Those were almost her last words. I'm not asking you to protect me. I'm asking you to prepare me. For a long moment, neither woman spoke. Then Maggie stood up. Come with me. She led Sarah to a closet in the back bedroom. Behind winter coats and storage boxes was a false panel she'd installed years ago. Behind the panel was a space just large enough for a single footlocker. Maggie pulled it out and opened it. Inside were artifacts from a life that officially never existed. Mission photographs, classified documents she'd never been able to destroy, 2 sets of dog tags, and a small wooden box containing medals that had never been officially awarded. This is everything I saved, Maggie said. Everything they tried to erase. Sarah reached in and pulled out a photograph. 6 women in desert camouflage standing in front of a Black Hawk helicopter. Maggie and Rachel in the center, arms around each other. The sisterhood, Maggie said. 12 of us graduated. 6 are still alive. We don't talk much anymore. Too painful. But we've never forgotten what we were. Who are the others? Scattered. One's a doctor in Seattle. One runs a security company in Texas. One teaches high school in Ohio. And one... Maggie paused. One is Admiral Victoria Chen, commander of Naval Special Warfare. Sarah's head snapped up. Admiral Chen was part of this program. She was our best operator, could disappear into any environment, build relationships with anyone, extract intelligence that nobody else could get. Maggie smiled slightly. She's the reason I took the job at the training center. She arranged it. Told me to stay close, stay invisible, and wait. Wait for what? For the right moment to come back. For the program to be ready to try again. Maggie closed the footlocker. I think that moment might be now. The knock on the front door made both women freeze. Maggie held up a hand. Stay quiet. She moved silently through the apartment, years of training taking over. She checked the peephole. Master Chief Frank Morrison stood on her doorstep. Maggie's blood went cold. She turned to Sarah. Back bedroom. Window opens to the alley. If things go bad, you run. Don't argue. Don't look back. You run. What's happening? Someone's been investigating me. Now go. Sarah moved. Maggie waited until she heard the bedroom door close, then opened the front door. Morrison smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. Evening, Mrs. Thornton. Mind if I come in? It's late, Master Chief. I have work in a few hours. Won't take long. He didn't wait for permission. He stepped past her into the apartment, eyes scanning everything. Nice place. Modest, clean. Not much personal stuff, though. Almost like someone who doesn't plan to stay long. Maggie closed the door, but didn't lock it. "What do you want?" "Just a friendly visit. See, I've been doing some research, and I found some interesting things about you." Morrison turned to face her. "Your employment history has some gaps. Big gaps. About 10 years where you just disappeared." "I traveled. Odd jobs. Nothing interesting." "That's so, because I talked to some people. People who remember things that aren't in official records. And they tell me stories about a program back in the 90s. Women trained for special operations. Supposedly disbanded records destroyed graduates scattered." Maggie kept her face neutral. "Sounds like a conspiracy theory." "Maybe. Except one of those people remembered a name. Margaret Thornton, daughter of a SEAL who died in '88. Morrison moved closer. "That's quite a coincidence, don't you think? My father was career Navy. So am I. Nothing suspicious about that. Your father was Master Chief William Thornton, SEAL Team 2, died in a helicopter crash that some people think wasn't an accident." Morrison's eyes narrowed. "And his daughter somehow ended up cleaning toilets at the same base where America trains its most elite warriors. That's not a coincidence. That's a pattern." Maggie felt the old instincts rising. The assessment of distance angles, potential weapons. Morrison was bigger, probably stronger, but he was also overconfident, and he didn't know what she was capable of. "What do you want, Master Chief?" "I want to know what you're really doing here. Who you're reporting to. What you're watching." He stepped closer. Close enough that she could smell the coffee on his breath. "Because I've spent my whole career protecting this institution from people who want to change it. Women who think they belong in places they don't. Politicians who think standards should be lowered. And spies who pretend to be janitors." "I'm not a spy." "Then what are you?" The bedroom door opened. Morrison's hand moved toward his sidearm as Sarah stepped into the hallway. "She's a family friend," Sarah said, her voice steady. "She knew my mother. I came to visit." Morrison's eyes flickered between the two women, calculating, reassessing. "And who are you?" "Lieutenant Junior Grade Sarah Hayes, currently assigned to the 1st Female SEAL Assessment Program." Sarah moved to stand beside Maggie. "Is there a problem here, Master Chief?" The rank differential was minimal, but Sarah was still an officer. Morrison couldn't manhandle her the way he might have handled Maggie alone. "No problem, ma'am." Morrison's voice had cooled. "Just checking on one of our civilian employees, making sure everything's in order." "Everything's fine. You can leave now." Morrison held Sarah's gaze for a long moment. Then he smiled again, that predatory expression that made Maggie's skin crawl. "Of course, ma'am. My apologies for the intrusion." He moved toward the door, then paused. "Mrs. Thornton, we'll continue this conversation another time." The door closed behind him. Sarah exhaled. "Who the hell was that? Someone who's been trying to destroy me since I got here. And now he knows I'm connected to you." "Is that bad?" "It's very bad. Morrison has been running a shadow campaign against women in special operations for years. He's gotten candidates dropped from programs, ended careers, and if he figures out what I really am, he'll use it against both of us." Sarah's jaw set. "Then we need to move faster than he does. We need help. Someone with enough rank to protect us." Maggie pulled out her phone. "I haven't made this call in 8 years, but I think it's time." She dialed a number she'd memorized 2 decades ago. It rang 3 times. "This is Admiral Chen." "Victoria, it's Maggie. We have a problem." The silence on the other end lasted only a second. But in that second, Maggie heard everything. The recognition. The memories. The weight of years of separation. "Tell me," Maggie told her. About Morrison. About Kane. About Sarah. about everything that had been building for 8 years. When she finished, Chen was quiet for a long moment. Morrison's been on my radar for a while. He's connected to some senior people who share his views. Taking him down won't be easy. I know. But it's time. We've waited long enough. The program is finally getting another chance, and I won't let people like Morrison burn it down again. What do you need me to do? Stay invisible for now. Keep working your cover. Let Morrison think he's winning. Chen's voice hardened. But be ready, because when I move, I'm going to need you to step out of the shadows. And when you do, everyone is going to know exactly who you are. Maggie looked at Sarah, Rachel's daughter, the next generation. I'll be ready. And Sarah Hayes, Rachel's girl. Is she really as good as her assessment scores suggest? Better. She's got her mother's fire. Then protect her, because she's the future of everything we built. And there are people who will do anything to make sure that future never happens. The call ended. Sarah was staring at Maggie with something new in her eyes. Not just respect. Recognition. You really were a SEAL, weren't you? We were never called that. Officially, we didn't exist. But yes, I was an operator. Your mother was an operator. And if you survive what's coming, you'll be one too. What do I need to do? Maggie moved to the footlocker and pulled out a worn notebook. Handwritten pages. Techniques, tactics, lessons learned from missions that would never be acknowledged. Everything I learned in 8 months of training and 10 years of operations is in this book. Study it, memorize it, and then burn it, because if anyone else finds it, we're both finished. Sarah took the notebook like it was sacred. Why are you trusting me with this? Because your mother trusted me with her life, and she asked me to take care of you. Maggie's voice caught. I failed her once. I won't fail her again. The next morning, Maggie returned to work as if nothing had happened. She mopped floors, she emptied trash cans, she listened to conversations she wasn't supposed to hear, and she learned that Morrison had called a meeting with Kane and his crew. They were planning something bigger than harassment, something that would expose Maggie once and for all. She found out the details from a young petty officer named Michael Torres, 22 years old, assigned to the training center as an administrative assistant. He'd noticed how the instructors treated Maggie, and it bothered him. "Ma'am, I probably shouldn't be telling you this," Torres said during a quiet moment near the supply closet. "But I heard them talking. Morrison and Kane. They're planning some kind of test. They want to put you in a situation where you'll either have to reveal what you can do or get seriously hurt." "What kind of situation?" "They mentioned the kill house, something about a live fire training exercise, making sure you're in there when it happens." Maggie's stomach dropped. The kill house was the close quarters combat training facility. Live fire meant real bullets. If they trapped her inside during an exercise, she'd be in a building full of operators shooting at targets they couldn't see clearly. "When?" 3 days, Friday night. They're calling it a training accident, waiting to happen. "Thank you, Torres. I won't forget this." The young man nodded nervously. "My grandmother always said you can tell a lot about people by how they treat the janitor. The way they treat you? It's not right. Someone should do something about it." He walked away before Maggie could respond. She found a quiet corner and pulled out her phone. "Admiral Chen, they're moving faster than we expected." "How fast?" 3 days. They're going to try to kill me. Make it look like an accident." Chen was silent for a moment. "Then we move in 2. I'll be there tomorrow night with a team from the Inspector General's office. We're going to shut this down before it starts. And if Morrison has friends who warn him, then we improvise. It's what we were trained for." Maggie ended the call and looked out the window at the Pacific Ocean. 20 years of hiding. 20 years of waiting. In 48 hours, either her cover would be blown, or she'd be dead. Either way, the woman who'd spent 2 decades being invisible was about to become impossible to ignore. She found Sarah that evening at the small gym where assessment candidates trained. The young woman was working through a series of combat drills, her movements sharp and precise. "We need to talk." They walked to a quiet corner. "The situation's escalating," Maggie said. "There's going to be a confrontation in 2 days, and when it happens, everything I've told you about me is going to become public. What do you need me to do? Stay away. This can't touch you. Your assessment starts in 3 weeks. If you're connected to whatever goes down, Morrison's friends will use it to wash you out before you even begin." Sarah shook her head. "I'm not hiding while you fight my battles." "This isn't your battle. Not yet. My mother died doing what you do. Her partner is about to risk everything to protect me. How is this not my battle?" Maggie grabbed Sarah's shoulders. "Because if you get eliminated from this program, everything we fought for dies with you. You're not just Rachel's daughter. You're the future of every woman who wants to serve at this level. I can't let you throw that away." Sarah's eyes glistened. "And I can't let you face this alone." "You won't. I have people coming. People who've been waiting years for this moment." Maggie softened her grip. "Your job is to survive, to succeed, to become what your mother and I could only dream of being. An operator who doesn't have to hide, who gets the recognition she deserves, who proves once and for all that capability has no gender. And if something happens to you, then you carry the mission forward. That's what soldiers do." Yes, Sarah pulled Maggie into a hug. The older woman stiffened at first, then relaxed into it. "Promise me you'll come back," Sarah whispered. "I'll do my best. Promise me." Maggie thought about all the promises she'd made, the ones she'd kept, the ones she'd broken, the ones she'd made to Rachel that still haunted her dreams. "I promise." It was a lie. They both knew it was a lie. But sometimes lies were all you had. The next 36 hours passed in a blur of preparation. Admiral Chen arrived with a team of 4 investigators from the Naval Criminal Investigative Service. They set up in a hotel off base away from Morrison's network of informants. The plan was simple. Document Morrison's conspiracy. Catch him in the act. Take down everyone involved before they could hurt anyone. But simple plans had a way of falling apart. The night before the operation, Maggie's phone buzzed with an unknown number. She answered cautiously. "Hello, Mrs. Thornton," Morrison's voice, cold, confident. "I know who you are. I know what you're planning. And I want you to know that it won't work." "I don't know what you're talking about." "Spare me. I spent 30 years in naval intelligence. You think I can't recognize a counter-operation when I see one? Chen thinks she can swoop in and be the hero, but she's forgotten something important." "What's that?" "I have friends too, friends in places she can't reach. By the time she moves, there won't be any evidence to find. Just a tragic accident involving a civilian contractor who was in the wrong place at the wrong time." Maggie's grip tightened on the phone. "You're making a mistake." "No, you made the mistake. You could have stayed invisible. Could have cleaned your toilets and kept your mouth shut, but you had to get involved with the Hayes girl, had to think you could change things." Morrison laughed. "Nothing changes, not really. There will always be men like me protecting the institution from women like you. Then I guess we'll see who's right." "Yes, we will. Good night, Mrs. Thornton. Sleep well. It might be your last chance." The line went dead. Maggie called Chen immediately. "He knows. Morrison knows everything." "How? I don't know. A leak? Surveillance? It doesn't matter. He's moving his timeline up." Chen cursed. "Then so do we. We go tonight." "Tonight? We're not ready. We're never going to be ready. That's the nature of this work. Chen's voice hardened. 20 years ago, we built something that scared the hell out of people in power. They destroyed it because they were afraid of what we represented. This is our chance to prove that destroying the program didn't destroy us. Maggie thought about Rachel, about the promises she'd made, about the daughter who was counting on her to survive. What do you need me to do? Go to the training center. Act normal. Morrison will make his move when he thinks he has the advantage. When he does, we'll be there. And if you're not, then you do what you were trained to do. You survive. And you make sure he doesn't. Maggie drove to the training center with her heart pounding. The facility was quiet at this hour. Most of the staff had gone home. Only security personnel and the occasional night shift worker remained. She parked in her usual spot, grabbed her cleaning supplies, walked through the front entrance like she had 1,000 times before. The security guard barely looked up. Invisible. Even now. Even when everything was about to change. She made her way through the corridors, mopping floors she didn't need to mop, checking rooms she didn't need to check. Waiting. At 2300 hours, she heard footsteps. Multiple people, moving with purpose. She ducked into a supply closet and held her breath. Kane's voice echoed through the hallway. You sure she's here? Security logged her in at 2200. Morrison. She's somewhere in the building. We find her. We have our conversation, and then we have our training accident. What about Chen? Chen's team is being detained at the main gate. Something about improper authorization for their investigation. Morrison laughed. I told you, friends in high places. Maggie's heart sank. Chen wasn't coming. She was alone. 4 men against 1. 54-year-old woman. 20 years ago, those wouldn't have been bad odds. But that was 20 years ago. She pulled out her phone. 1 bar of signal. She typed a quick message to Sarah. Chen blocked. I'm on my own. Stay away. No matter what happens, stay away. The response came immediately. I'm coming. No, Maggie typed back. That's an order. You're not my commanding officer, and I don't leave partners behind. Maggie closed her eyes. Stubborn. Just like her mother. The footsteps were getting closer. She had 2 choices. Hide and hope they didn't find her, or face them on her own terms. She thought about Rachel, about the moment in Baghdad when everything went wrong, about the promise she'd broken, and the one she'd just made. Margaret Thornton stepped out of the supply closet and into the hallway. Kane stopped mid-stride. Behind him, Morrison, Santos, and Webb spread out, blocking any escape. Well, well, Morrison smiled. There she is, our favorite janitor. Maggie set down her mop, straightened her spine, met his eyes without flinching. I think we both know I'm more than that. Do we? Morrison moved closer. Then why don't you show us? Because right now all I see is an old woman who's about to have a very bad night. Maggie looked at the 4 men surrounding her, assessed distances, angles, weaknesses. Kane favored his right shoulder. Old injury from ranger school. Santos was aggressive but sloppy. He'd overcommit on his first attack. Webb was cautious. He'd hang back and wait for an opening. Morrison was the most dangerous. He wouldn't fight fair. He'd use weapons leverage, anything to win. 4 against 1. 20 years since she'd faced odds like this. But some skills never fade. You want to know what I am? Maggie's voice was calm, steady. I'm what happens when you underestimate someone for 20 years. She shifted her weight slightly, centered herself the way Reeves had taught her decades ago. I'm what happens when you try to destroy something that refuses to die. Kane cracked his knuckles. Enough talk. Let's see what Grandma can do. He lunged, and Maggie Thornton stopped being invisible. Kane's fist cut through the air where Maggie's head had been a fraction of a second earlier. She slipped left, letting his momentum carry him forward off balance. Her hand shot out, caught his wrist, twisted. The joint lock snapped into place before Kane understood what was happening. He screamed. Maggie drove her elbow into the nerve cluster behind his ear. Kane dropped like a puppet with cut strings, unconscious before he hit the floor. 3 seconds. 1 down. Santos charged with a roar swinging wild, exactly like she'd predicted. Sloppy. Aggressive. Overcommitted. She stepped inside his reach, too close for his punches to land with power. Her palm struck his chin, snapping his head back. Her foot swept his ankle. He went down, hard skull bouncing off concrete. He tried to rise. She drove her knee into his temple. 6 seconds. 2 down. Webb hung back, eyes wide. He'd watched 2 trained operators go down in less time than it took to draw a breath. His hand moved toward his sidearm. Don't. Maggie's voice cut through the corridor. You reach for that weapon, I'll break your arm before you clear the holster. Webb froze. Smart boy. Maggie didn't take her eyes off Morrison. Now get on your knees, hands behind your head. Webb complied. His face had gone pale. Whatever he'd expected tonight, this wasn't it. Morrison hadn't moved. He stood 10 feet away, watching the carnage with an expression Maggie couldn't quite read. Not fear, not surprise. Calculation. Impressive, he said. 20 years behind a mop and you still move like that. I told you. Some skills never fade. No, they don't. Morrison's hand slipped into his jacket. When it emerged, he was holding a compact pistol. But skills don't stop bullets. Maggie's muscles tensed. She was fast, but not faster than a trigger pull at 10 feet. You shoot me, and you'll never explain it. Too many witnesses. Too many questions. Will there be? Morrison smiled. Kane and Santos will say you attacked them. Webb will confirm it. 4 military personnel defending themselves against a deranged civilian who somehow got access to the training facility. Tragic, really, but not suspicious. Chen knows everything. She'll tear this place apart. Chen is sitting in the holding cell at the main gate being questioned about her improper investigation authorization. By the time she's released, this will all be over. Just another unfortunate accident. Maggie's mind raced through options. The distance was too far to close before he fired. No cover within reach. Her only weapon was a mop handle 15 feet behind her. You've thought of everything, she said. I've had 20 years to think about it. 20 years of watching people like you try to change an institution that doesn't want to be changed. Morrison's voice hardened. You know what really bothers me? It's not that you're a woman. It's that you're a liar. You pretended to be nothing. You watched and waited and gathered information. You're a spy in our own house. I was an operator. I served this country in ways you'll never understand. You were an experiment that failed, and experiments that fail get terminated. His finger tightened on the trigger. The door behind Morrison exploded inward. Sarah Hayes hit him at full speed, her shoulder driving into his lower back. The gun discharged into the ceiling as Morrison stumbled forward. Sarah kept driving, using her momentum to slam him into the wall. The pistol clattered across the floor. Maggie was already moving. She kicked the weapon away, then grabbed Morrison's arm and wrenched it behind his back. Her knee drove into his spine, pinning him against the wall. I told you to stay away, Maggie hissed at Sarah. And I told you I don't leave partners behind. Sarah was breathing hard, adrenaline flooding her system. Besides, I had backup. Footsteps thundered down the corridor. Admiral Victoria Chen rounded the corner with 6 military police officers behind her. Her face was carved from stone. "Secure these men," Chen ordered. "Morrison, Kane, Santos, Webb. All of them. I want them in separate holding cells within the hour." The MPs moved with practiced efficiency, zip-tying wrists and hauling bodies to their feet. Morrison twisted in Maggie's grip, his face contorted with rage. "This isn't over, Chen. I have friends, powerful friends. You think you can just shut up?" Chen's voice could have frozen the Pacific. "Master Chief Frank Morrison, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit assault, attempted murder, abuse of authority, and conduct unbecoming. Those are just the charges I can prove tonight. By the time I'm done investigating, you'll be lucky to see the outside of Leavenworth before you're 80. You can't do this. I have 30 years of service. You have 30 years of protecting predators and destroying careers. You have 30 years of making sure women like us never got the recognition we earned." Chen stepped closer. "Did you really think I didn't know about you? Did you think I rose to Admiral without learning who my enemies were?" Morrison's face went white. "That's right. I've been building a case against you for 5 years. Every candidate you sabotaged, every investigation you buried, every complaint you made disappear. I have it all. The only reason you're not already in prison is because I needed you to make a move, to prove what you really are." She looked at Maggie. "Thank you for being the bait." Maggie released Morrison into the MP's custody. "You could have told me the plan. I needed your reactions to be genuine. Morrison's smart. If you'd known you were being watched, he would have sensed it." Chen's expression softened slightly. "I'm sorry. I know that wasn't fair. Fair doesn't matter. Results matter." Kane was regaining consciousness, groaning as MPs hauled him upright. His eyes found Maggie and went wide with something that might have been fear. "What the hell are you?" he slurred. Maggie met his gaze. "I'm what happens when you corner a woman who's been trained to kill since before you were born." The MPs dragged him away. Santos and Webb went next, both silent, both looking like men who'd just realized they'd made the worst mistake of their lives. Then Morrison, still cursing, still threatening, until the corridor was empty except for Maggie, Sarah, and Admiral Chen. Chen let out a long breath. "That was closer than I wanted. When they blocked us at the gate, I thought we'd lost you." "How did you get through?" "Sarah called me, told me what was happening. I contacted the base commander directly, went over the heads of Morrison's friends." Chen looked at Sarah with something like approval. "Quick thinking, Lieutenant." Sarah shrugged. "Maggie told me to stay away. I figured that meant I should definitely not stay away." "Your mother had the same problem with following orders?" Chen's voice caught slightly. "She'd be proud of you tonight." Sarah's eyes glistened. She didn't trust herself to speak. Chen turned back to Maggie. "There's going to be an investigation. Full scope. Morrison wasn't working alone. He had supporters at every level of the command structure. We're going to root them out, but it's going to take time." "What happens in the meantime?" "In the meantime, you have a choice to make." Chen pulled out her phone, showed Maggie a document. "This is an official offer of reinstatement. Captain Margaret Thornton, United States Navy Reserve, assigned as special advisor to the Female SEAL Assessment Program." Maggie stared at the screen. "I've been a civilian for 20 years. You've been hiding for 20 years. That's not the same thing." Chen put the phone away. "The program needs instructors who understand what these women are going to face. Not just the physical challenges, the institutional resistance, the men who'll try to break them, the system that's designed to make them fail. There are other people, other Siren graduates. There are. And I'm reaching out to all of them. But you're the one who's been watching this facility for 8 years. You know these instructors. You know their methods. You know where the problems are." Chen's voice softened. And you made a promise to Rachel. This is how you keep it." Maggie looked at Sarah, Rachel's daughter, the next generation. "I'm 54 years old. I can't operate anymore." "Nobody's asking you to operate. I'm asking you to teach, to mentor, to protect." Chen stepped closer. "I'm asking you to do what you've been doing for 20 years, except this time you don't have to hide." The weight of 2 decades pressed down on Maggie's shoulders. 20 years of silence, 20 years of watching, 20 years of pretending to be something small and unremarkable. "Can I think about it? You have until morning. After that, the investigation goes public. Your name will be in the report. Your background will be revealed. Either you step forward on your own terms, or you get dragged into the light, whether you want it or not." Chen headed for the door. She paused at the threshold. "For what it's worth, I've missed you, Maggie. All these years watching you mop floors while I sat in meetings, it felt wrong. You deserve better. We all did." She disappeared down the corridor. Sarah moved to stand beside Maggie. "What are you going to do?" Maggie didn't answer. She was looking at the spot where Morrison had stood. The spot where 60 seconds ago she'd been certain she was going to die. "I don't know how to be visible," she finally said. "I've been invisible for so long I've forgotten what it feels like to be seen." Maybe that's the point. Maybe you don't have to know how. Maybe you just have to start. Your mother said something like that once, during training. She said courage isn't the absence of fear, it's being afraid and doing it anyway. Sounds like her. Maggie turned to face Sarah fully. "You shouldn't have come tonight. You could have been killed. Your career could have been destroyed. My mother's partner was in danger. What was I supposed to do? Follow orders. Protect yourself. Think about the mission. The mission is bigger than one assessment program. The mission is proving that women belong here, and I can't prove that by hiding while someone else fights my battles." Sarah's voice strengthened. "You taught me that. In the letters Mom wrote, she said you were the bravest person she ever knew. Not because you weren't afraid, but because you never let fear stop you from doing what was right." Maggie felt tears prick her eyes. She blinked them back. "Your mother exaggerated." "My mother never exaggerated about anything important." They stood in silence for a moment. 2 generations of warriors, connected by blood and loss, and a promise made in a Baghdad night 20 years ago. "I'll take the job," Maggie said quietly. Yeah, but I have conditions. I want you in my first class. I want to train you personally, and I want full authority to fail anyone who doesn't meet standards regardless of political pressure. Chen will agree to that. She'd better. Because if I'm coming out of the shadows, I'm doing it my way." Maggie looked down at her hands. The same hands that had just taken down 2 men in 6 seconds. The hands that had carried Rachel's body through the streets of Baghdad. "I spent 20 years cleaning up after other people. Now I'm going to clean up the institution itself." Sarah smiled. "That sounds like something Mom would say. Where do you think she learned it?" They walked out of the corridor together, leaving behind the blood and chaos and broken men. Behind them, a chapter was closing. Ahead of them, something new was beginning. But Maggie knew it wouldn't be easy. Morrison was just the tip of the iceberg. There were others, men who believed as he believed, who would fight to protect the way things had always been. And there was still the matter of what she'd done. 20 years of secrets. 20 years of lies. Coming clean would mean facing questions she didn't want to answer. Reliving memories she'd spent decades trying to forget. She thought about Rachel. About the night in Baghdad. About the moment when everything went wrong and she'd been forced to make an impossible choice. The truth was more complicated than what Chen knew. More complicated than what Sarah knew. The truth was that Maggie hadn't just failed to save Rachel. The truth was that Maggie was the reason Rachel had been in that vehicle in the first place. It was a secret she'd carried for 20 years. A secret that ate at her every single day. A secret that, if it came out, would destroy everything she'd built. But secrets had a way of surfacing, especially when people started digging. And Chen was about to dig very, very deep. The following morning, Maggie stood in Admiral Chen's office wearing civilian clothes that suddenly felt wrong, like a costume she'd been wearing too long. Chen sat behind her desk, a thick folder open in front of her. The investigation is already turning up more than we expected. Morrison had a network. 12 people so far spread across 3 commands. Some of them are senior officers. How senior? Captain level, maybe higher. Chen closed the folder. This is going to get ugly, Maggie. People are going to push back hard. They're going to attack anyone associated with the investigation. Including you. Especially me. I've already gotten calls from 2 admirals asking me to reconsider, suggesting that maybe Morrison's actions were misguided but well-intentioned. Chen's lip curled. Well-intentioned. He tried to murder you. He tried to protect something he believed in. That doesn't make him right, but it makes him understandable. You're being generous. I'm being realistic. Men like Morrison don't just appear. The institution creates them, rewards them, promotes them. If we want to change things, we have to change the system, not just remove the individuals. Chen nodded slowly. That's why I need you. Not just as an instructor. As an advisor. Someone who understands how this place really works. I understand how it worked 20 years ago. Things have changed. Not as much as you'd think. Chen leaned forward. The female assessment program starts in 3 weeks. 42 candidates. Best of the best. And there are people who are already trying to make sure it fails. What kind of people? Instructors who'll push too hard too fast. Evaluators who will apply subjective standards. Support personnel who will make sure equipment malfunctions at critical moments. Chen's voice hardened. The same things that happened to us in Siren. The same sabotage, just with different faces. And you want me to spot it. I want you to stop it. You've been watching this facility for 8 years. You know who the problems are. You know where the weak points are. Use that knowledge. Maggie thought about all the conversations she'd overheard. All the patterns she'd noticed. All the small cruelties she'd witnessed while pretending to be invisible. There's a senior chief in the dive program, Hendricks. He's been washing out female candidates for years. Always has a justification. Safety concerns, performance issues. But the pattern is too consistent to be coincidental. I know about Hendricks. He's being reassigned. There's also a medical officer, Lieutenant Commander Barrett. He's been diagnosing women with anxiety disorders at 3 times the rate of male candidates, getting them medically separated before they can complete training. Chen made a note. What else? Maggie spent the next hour laying out everything she'd observed. Names, dates, incidents, a comprehensive map of institutional resistance that she'd been building in her head for 8 years without even realizing it. When she finished, Chen sat back in her chair. This is more than I expected. Some of these people are well respected. Taking them on will create enemies. Taking them on is the only way this program succeeds. You can have the best candidates in the world, but if the system is designed to fail them, they'll fail. I know. Chen stood and walked to the window. I've been fighting this battle for 30 years. Sometimes I wonder if it's even possible to win. It's possible. It just takes time. And sacrifice. And people willing to keep pushing even when everything seems hopeless. Chen turned back. You sound like your father. Maggie felt her chest tighten. You knew him. I knew of him. His reputation preceded him. Master Chief William Thornton, one of the original frogmen, legend in the teams. Chen paused. I also know he was investigating something when he died. Something that powerful people wanted buried. That's ancient history. Is it? Chen's eyes were sharp. Morrison mentioned something during his arrest. Said your father had been asking questions about gender integration back in the 80s. Said that's what got him killed. The world seemed to tilt. Maggie gripped the edge of Chen's desk. That's not possible. My father died in a training accident. Did he? Chen pulled out another folder. I've been looking into it. The investigation was closed very quickly. Witnesses were transferred to remote postings. Records were sealed. What are you saying? I'm saying your father may have been the first casualty in a war that's been going on a lot longer than anyone realizes, and I think you deserve to know the truth. Maggie's legs felt weak. She sat down heavily. Her father. The training accident that wasn't an accident. The secrets he'd taken to his grave. Why are you telling me this now? Because Morrison's network goes back decades. Some of the names in his files are names that appeared in your father's investigation. If we're going to take these people down, we need to understand the full scope of what we're fighting. You're asking me to investigate my father's death. I'm asking you to help me expose a conspiracy that may have been operating inside the military for 40 years. Chen sat back down. I know it's a lot. I know you've already given more than anyone should have to give. But you're the only person who has the background, the knowledge, and the motivation to see this through. Maggie stared at the folder in Chen's hands, her father's name written on the tab. 37 years of questions she'd never been able to answer. I need time to think. Take all the time you need. But Maggie, Chen's voice softened. Whatever you decide, you're not alone anymore. You have people who will stand with you. People who understand what you've been through. Maggie nodded, not trusting herself to speak. She left Chen's office in a daze. Her father's death. Morrison's network. A conspiracy spanning decades. It was too much. Too big. Too overwhelming. But as she walked through the corridors of the building she'd cleaned for 8 years, she felt something else beneath the fear and confusion. Purpose. For 20 years, she'd been hiding, waiting, surviving. Now she had a chance to do something more, to finish what her father started, to honor Rachel's memory, to protect Sarah and every woman who would come after her. She found Sarah waiting outside the building. What happened? Maggie looked at Rachel's daughter. The next generation. The future of everything they'd fought for. Everything just got a lot more complicated. More complicated than attempted murder and a military conspiracy. Much more. Maggie took a deep breath. But I'm done running. I'm done hiding. Whatever comes next, I'm facing it head on. Sarah smiled. That's the woman my mother wrote about. Let's hope your mother was right about me. They walked toward the parking lot together. Behind them, the sun was rising over the Pacific, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. A new day, a new chapter. And somewhere in the shadows, enemies were already preparing their counterstrike. 3 weeks later, Maggie stood in front of 42 women who had no idea what they were about to face. They sat in rigid formation, backs straight, eyes forward. Rangers, pilots, intelligence officers, combat medics, the best female candidates the military had ever assembled for a single program. And they were all looking at her like she was a ghost. My name is Captain Margaret Thornton, Maggie said. 20 years ago, I graduated from a program that officially never existed. I conducted operations in places I can't name, doing things I can't describe. 3 weeks ago, I was cleaning toilets in this building. Murmurs rippled through the formation. You're wondering why I'm telling you this. You're wondering what a 54-year-old former janitor can teach you about becoming SEALs. Maggie paused. I'm going to show you. She gestured to Sarah, who stood at the edge of the formation. Lieutenant Hayes, front and center. Sarah moved with the fluid confidence of someone who'd spent her entire life preparing for this moment. She stopped 3 feet from Maggie and dropped into a fighting stance. Attack me, Maggie said. Full speed, don't hold back. Sarah hesitated for half a second. Then she launched forward with a combination that would have dropped most opponents. Maggie slipped the first punch, redirected the second, and used Sarah's momentum to sweep her legs. Sarah hit the ground hard. Before she could recover, Maggie had her in an arm lock that would have dislocated the shoulder with 1 more pound of pressure. Yield! Sarah gasped. Maggie released her and helped her up. Lieutenant Hayes is 24 years old in peak physical condition and has trained in combat arts since she was 16. She's one of the most capable candidates in this program. Maggie turned back to the formation. I'm 54 years old with 2 bad knees and a shoulder that hasn't worked right since 2003. She didn't touch me. Silence. The people who don't want you here think age and gender determine capability. They're wrong. What determines capability is training technique and the willingness to keep fighting when everything tells you to quit. Maggie's voice hardened. In the next 8 weeks, I'm going to teach you things that aren't in any manual. Things that will save your lives when everything goes wrong. But first you have to survive the instructors who are going to try to break you. She let that sink in. Questions. A hand went up in the 3rd row. Petty Officer 2nd Class Jennifer Wu, 26 years old, former Navy diver, one of the top performers in the initial screening. Ma'am, you said people don't want us here. Who exactly are we fighting against? Everyone who's invested in the way things have always been. Instructors who believe women don't belong. Evaluators who'll apply subjective standards. Support personnel who'll make sure your equipment fails at critical moments. Maggie scanned the faces in front of her. Some of them have been identified and removed, but there are others. People who are smart enough to hide their prejudice behind legitimate concerns. How do we know who to trust? You don't. That's why you trust each other. Watch each other's backs. Report anything that seems wrong, even if you're not sure. Maggie paused. And trust me, I've been watching this facility for 8 years. I know where the problems are. The briefing continued for another hour. When it ended, the candidates filed out to begin their first day of actual training. Sarah lingered behind. That was intense, she said. You didn't tell me you were going to use me as a demonstration. Would you have preferred I use someone else? No, I just would have liked a heads up. Combat doesn't give you a heads up, neither does life. Maggie gathered her notes. How are you feeling? Ready for this? Honestly, I'm terrified. Good. Terror keeps you sharp. It's complacency that gets people killed. They walked out together into the morning air. I got a call from Admiral Chen last night, Sarah said. She wants to see you this afternoon. Something about your father's case. Maggie's step faltered slightly. 3 weeks of digging through declassified documents and interviewing retired personnel had produced fragments of a picture she wasn't sure she wanted to see completed. Did she say what she found? No, just that it was important. 2 hours later, Maggie sat in Chen's office, staring at a photograph she'd never seen before. Her father, 37 years younger, standing next to a woman in civilian clothes outside a building she didn't recognize. Who is she? Lieutenant Commander Patricia Hawkins, Naval Intelligence. She was assigned to your father's team in 1987 as part of an experimental integration program. Chen slid another document across the desk. Sound familiar? Maggie's hands trembled as she read. an initiative to test gender integration in special operations, decades before Siren, decades before anyone admitted it was possible. I never knew. Nobody did. The program was classified at the highest levels. Only a handful of people knew it existed. Chen leaned forward. Your father was one of the strongest advocates. He believed women could operate at the same level as men, if given proper training. He was pushing to expand the program when he died. And Hawkins transferred to a desk job 2 weeks after your father's accident. She resigned from the Navy 6 months later, disappeared from public records entirely. Where is she now? I don't know, but I'm working on it. Chen pulled out another folder. There's something else. Something I wasn't sure I should show you. She opened the folder and placed a single page in front of Maggie. It was an internal memo from 1988. The header read, Operation Continuity, Termination Order. Maggie read it 3 times before the words made sense. Her father hadn't died in a training accident. He'd been murdered. The memo authorized the elimination of Master Chief William Thornton due to his continued resistance to program termination and threat to operational security. This can't be real. The authentication marks check out. The signatures are consistent with known samples. The paper stock matches other documents from that period. Chen's voice was gentle, but firm. I know this is hard to hear, Maggie, but your father was killed because he believed in something. The same thing we believe in. Maggie felt the room spinning. 37 years of grief. 37 years of believing it was just bad luck, wrong place, wrong time. It was all a lie. Who signed it? Chen hesitated. Who signed the order Victoria? Rear Admiral James Morrison, Frank Morrison's father. The connection hit Maggie like a physical blow. Morrison, the man who'd tried to kill her 3 weeks ago, the son of the man who'd ordered her father's murder. They're the same family. 3 generations of Morrisons have been working to prevent women from entering special operations. James Morrison killed your father. His son Frank tried to kill you. And there's evidence that Frank's son, Lieutenant Commander David Morrison, is currently assigned to the Pentagon in a position where he could influence policy decisions about integration programs. This is a dynasty. They've been fighting this war for 40 years. Longer than that. James Morrison's father was involved in blocking women from combat roles during World War II. Chen closed the folder. We're not fighting individuals, Maggie. We're fighting a belief system that's been passed down through generations. Maggie sat in silence, processing. Her father's death. The Morrison family. Decades of conspiracy to keep women out of positions they'd earned. What do we do with this? We expose it, all of it. I've been building a case for congressional testimony. When I'm done, the entire history of this resistance will be public record. Chen paused. But I need your help. You're the living proof that the program worked. Your testimony could change everything. My testimony means admitting I was part of a classified program. Operations I conducted. People who died. I've already cleared it with the appropriate authorities. You'll be granted immunity for anything revealed during testimony. The program's existence will be officially acknowledged. Maggie thought about Rachel. About Baghdad. About the secret she'd been carrying for 20 years. There are things I haven't told you. About what happened the night Rachel died. Chen's expression didn't change. I assumed there were. If I testify, those things might come out. They might. Are you willing to take that risk? The question hung in the air between them. Maggie thought about her father murdered for believing in something. She thought about Rachel dying in her arms while asking her to protect Sarah. She thought about the 42 women who were right now beginning a journey that could change everything. Yes, I'm willing. Good. Chen stood. There's someone I want you to meet. someone who might be able to fill in some of the gaps in our knowledge. She led Maggie through a series of corridors to a secure conference room. Inside, an elderly woman sat at the table, her silver hair pulled back in a neat bun, her posture still military straight, despite her obvious age. "Maggie, this is retired Commander Patricia Hawkins. She served with your father in 1987. The woman who'd been standing next to her father in the photograph. Hawkins rose and extended her hand. Her grip was firm, her eyes sharp despite the wrinkles surrounding them. "You look just like him," Hawkins said. "Same eyes, same determination. You knew my father. I served under him. He was the finest operator I ever worked with." Hawkins sat back down. "And he saved my life the night they tried to kill us both." Maggie felt her knees go weak. She lowered herself into a chair. "Start from the beginning." Hawkins spoke for 2 hours. She described a program that had trained 6 women for special operations in the mid-'80s. She described the resistance they'd faced, the sabotage, the threats. She described the night when someone had tried to eliminate the entire team to prevent the program from succeeding. "Bill figured it out 2 days before the operation. He warned us, told us to disappear. He said he'd handle it." Hawkins's voice cracked. "He confronted them directly, thought he could expose what they were doing, but they were too powerful, too connected. The helicopter crash. Staged. They killed him and made it look like an accident. Then they classified everything and scattered anyone who knew the truth." Tears glistened in Hawkins's eyes. "I've spent 37 years in hiding, Maggie. Changed my name. Moved every few years, always looking over my shoulder, and the whole time I've been waiting for someone to pick up where Bill left off. Why didn't you come forward before?" "Because the Morrisons always had someone in a position of power. Every time I thought about going public, I'd discover another family member in another key role. They were everywhere. Still are." Chen spoke up. "Commander Hawkins has agreed to testify alongside you. Her account combined with the documentation we've gathered will be impossible to dismiss. When, 3 weeks, the Senate Armed Services Committee has agreed to hold closed-door hearings, we'll present everything we have. 3 weeks, the same amount of time remaining in the initial phase of the female assessment program. What happens to the candidates while we're doing this? They continue training. Admiral Chen has assigned trusted instructors to oversee the program in your absence." Chen paused. "But there's a complication." "What kind of complication?" "David Morrison, Frank's son. He's been asking questions about the investigation, reaching out to people, building a counter-narrative." "What kind of counter-narrative?" "That you're mentally unstable. That your claims about Siren are fabricated, that you attacked Morrison and his men unprovoked, and Chen is covering it up." Chen's jaw tightened. "He's good at this. Media contacts, political connections. If he gets ahead of our testimony, he could poison the well before we even speak." Maggie felt the familiar anger rising. Another Morrison. Another generation of the same war. "Then we need to move faster than he does. We need evidence he can't dismiss, something that proves the pattern beyond any doubt." Hawkins spoke up. "There might be something. In 1987, when I went into hiding, I took documents with me, copies of everything I could get my hands on, names, dates, operational orders. I've kept them hidden for 37 years. "Where are they?" "Safety deposit box in Montana, under a fake name." Hawkins smiled grimly. "Old habits. Can you get them? I'll leave tonight." Chen stood. "I'll arrange transport and security. This is the break we've been waiting for." As they prepared to leave, Hawkins touched Maggie's arm. "There's something else. Something I've never told anyone." The old woman's voice dropped. "The night Bill died, he called me, 1 in the morning. He said he'd found something bigger than just the resistance to our program. Something that went all the way to the top. What do you mean? He said the Morrisons weren't acting alone. They were part of something larger. A network of families all connected by the same ideology. All working to keep certain types of people out of power. Hawkins's eyes bore into Maggie's. He called it the Old Guard. He said they'd been controlling military advancement for generations. The Old Guard. Maggie felt a chill run down her spine. Did he say who else was involved? He was going to tell me everything the next day, but he never got the chance. That night, Maggie couldn't sleep. She lay in her apartment, staring at the ceiling, thinking about her father. About the Old Guard. About a conspiracy that stretched back generations. Her phone buzzed. A text from Sarah. Something's wrong. Come to the barracks. Now. Maggie was out the door in 30 seconds. She found Sarah outside the female candidate's quarters, her face pale in the harsh security lights. What happened? Jennifer Wu. She's in the infirmary. They're saying she had a panic attack during a water confidence drill. But Maggie... Sarah's voice shook. She's one of the strongest swimmers in the program. She was a Navy diver. She doesn't panic. Who was running the drill? Senior Chief Hendricks. The name hit Maggie like a punch. Hendricks, the instructor she'd identified to Chen weeks ago, the one who'd been washing out female candidates for years. I thought he was being reassigned. He was supposed to be, but his orders got delayed. Administrative issues. Administrative issues. The same kind of issues that had blocked Chen's team at the gate 3 weeks ago. Take me to Wu. The infirmary was quiet. Jennifer Wu lay in a bed near the back, an IV in her arm, her eyes vacant. Maggie sat beside her. Jennifer, can you tell me what happened? Wu's eyes focused slowly. Recognition dawned. Captain Thornton. I'm here. You're safe. Tell me what happened in the water. Wu's breathing quickened. I don't remember. I was fine. And then suddenly I couldn't breathe, couldn't move, like my body wasn't mine anymore. Did anyone give you anything before the drill water food? Just the standard electrolyte drink. Hendricks handed them out personally. Wu's brow furrowed. He said it was a new formula. Better hydration. Maggie's blood went cold. Did everyone drink it? Most of us. Some of the women didn't like the taste. The ones who didn't drink it, how did they perform? Fine, normal. Wu's eyes widened as understanding dawned. Oh God, he drugged us. Maggie stood abruptly. Sarah, get Chen on the phone. Now. And have someone secure whatever's left of those drinks. 2 hours later, the laboratory results confirmed what Maggie already knew. The electrolyte drinks had been contaminated with a compound that induced panic symptoms in high-stress situations. Hendricks was arrested at his home at 0400, but he wasn't the real target. He was just a tool. Someone else had provided the compound, created the opportunity, delayed the reassignment orders. Someone with connections, resources, the ability to manipulate the system from inside. David Morrison. The congressional testimony couldn't wait 3 weeks. It had to happen now. Chen made the calls. The hearing was moved up to the following day. At 0900, Maggie sat at a table in a secure room in Washington, D.C., facing 12 senators who held the future of everything she'd fought for in their hands. Captain Thornton, the chairman said, you may begin your testimony. Maggie looked at the faces around the room, some skeptical, some sympathetic, all waiting to hear what she had to say. She thought about her father, about Rachel, about Sarah, and Jennifer Wu, and all the women who would come after them. 40 years ago, she began, My father was murdered for believing that women could serve in special operations. 20 years ago, I graduated from a program that proved he was right. 3 weeks ago, men tried to kill me for the same crime." She paused. "What I'm about to tell you will be difficult to believe, but every word of it is true. And by the time I'm finished, you'll understand why some people would do anything to keep it secret." And then Margaret Thornton, the invisible woman who'd spent 20 years mopping floors, began to tell the truth. Maggie spoke for 4 hours. She told them about her father's murder, about Operation Siren, about Rachel dying in her arms in Baghdad, about 20 years of hiding in plain sight while men like Morrison worked to destroy everything she'd helped build. She told them about the old guard, the network of families that had been controlling military advancement for generations, the documents Hawkins had retrieved from Montana that proved the conspiracy stretched back to World War II. She told them everything. When she finished, the room was silent. Senator Margaret Collins, the ranking member of the committee, was the first to speak. Her voice was barely above a whisper. "Captain Thornton, are you telling us that elements within our own military have been conducting a coordinated campaign to prevent women from serving in combat roles for over 80 years?" "Yes, ma'am." "And that this campaign has included murder sabotage and the systematic destruction of evidence?" "Yes, ma'am." "And that members of this conspiracy currently hold positions of power within the Department of Defense?" "Yes, ma'am, including Lieutenant Commander David Morrison, who is currently assigned to the Office of the Secretary of Defense." The senators exchanged glances. Some looked skeptical. Others looked horrified. Senator William Hartford, a former Marine, leaned forward. "Captain, these are extraordinary claims. You're asking us to believe that decorated officers, men with distinguished service records, have been engaged in criminal conspiracy for decades." "I'm not asking you to believe anything, Senator. I'm presenting evidence, documents, testimony, a pattern of behavior that spans 4 generations. Maggie met his eyes without flinching. "You can choose to ignore it, but if you do, you become part of the cover-up." Hartford's face reddened. "Now wait just a minute. Senator." Admiral Chen's voice cut through the tension. "If I may." She stood and approached the table where the evidence had been laid out. "I've served in this Navy for 35 years. I've commanded ships-led combat operations and risen to the rank of admiral. I did all of this while members of the old guard worked actively to end my career." She picked up a folder and opened it. "This is my personnel file. Every evaluation, every assignment, every promotion decision. What you'll find is a pattern. At every critical juncture, someone intervened to block my advancement. The same names appear over and over: Morrison, Hendricks, Barrett. Names that also appear in Captain Thornton's evidence." Chen set the folder down. "I succeeded despite their efforts. But for every woman like me who made it through, dozens were forced out, not because they lacked capability, because the system was designed to fail them." Senator Collins spoke again. "Admiral, what are you asking this committee to do?" "I'm asking you to authorize a full investigation, to remove the individuals we've identified from their positions pending that investigation, and to ensure that the female assessment program currently underway at Coronado is allowed to proceed without interference. And if we don't," Chen's voice hardened, "then I'll take this evidence public. Every document, every name, every crime. The American people will know exactly what's been done in their name and who's been doing it." The room erupted. Senators shouted over each other. Staff members scrambled to restore order. The chairman banged his gavel repeatedly, demanding silence. In the chaos, Maggie's phone buzzed. A text from Sarah. David Morrison just showed up at Coronado. He's claiming authority to suspend the program. What do I do? Maggie stood abruptly. Admiral, we have a problem. Chen read the message. Her face went pale. Senators, I need to be excused. There's an emergency at the training facility. Admiral, these proceedings are not. My candidates are in danger. You can continue without me, or you can have me arrested. Those are your options. When she was out the door before anyone could respond, Maggie followed her heart pounding. They made it to a military aircraft in 40 minutes. The flight to San Diego took 2 hours. Every minute felt like an eternity. How does Morrison have authority to suspend the program? Maggie demanded. He doesn't, but he has friends who can create the appearance of authority. Forged orders, corrupted chains of command. Chen's jaw was tight. This is their last play. If they can shut down the program before the investigation begins, they can claim it failed on its own merits. What happens to the candidates? They get labeled as washouts. Their careers are over before they start, and the old guard gets to say they were right all along. Maggie thought about Sarah, about Jennifer Wu, and the other 40 women who'd given everything to be here. That's not going to happen. They landed at Naval Air Station North Island and drove directly to the training facility. The scene was chaos. Military police vehicles surrounded the administrative building. Candidates stood in confused clusters, some still in their training gear. Instructors argued with armed guards who wouldn't let them pass. Sarah met them at the perimeter. Morrison's inside with the base commander. He's got papers that supposedly authorize him to take control of the program pending a security review. Where did the papers come from? Pentagon. At least that's what they say. The base commander doesn't know what to do. He's never seen orders like this before. Chen's phone rang. She answered, listened, then her expression shifted from anger to something colder. Understood. Keep them on the line. She looked at Maggie. That was Senator Collins. The committee has voted to authorize an emergency investigation. They're issuing arrest warrants for everyone on our list, including David Morrison. Does he know? Not yet, but he will soon. His friends in Washington are already being detained. His support network is collapsing. Then let's finish this. They pushed through the perimeter. The MPs hesitated, uncertain who to obey. Chen's stars on her collar settled the question. Inside the administrative building, they found David Morrison standing behind the base commander's desk, like he owned it. He was younger than his father, maybe 40, with the same cold eyes and the same arrogant smile. Admiral Chen, I was wondering when you'd show up. Lieutenant Commander Morrison, you're under arrest. Morrison laughed. On what charge? Conspiracy to commit murder, obstruction of justice, conduct unbecoming an officer. Chen stepped forward. Your father is already in custody. Your grandfather's crimes have been documented for the historical record. The old guard is finished. The smile faded from Morrison's face. You have no idea what you're dealing with. This isn't just a few families with old grievances. This is an ideology, a belief system that's been part of this military since its founding. You can arrest me, you can arrest 100 more like me, but you can't change what people believe. Maybe not, but I can make sure they can't act on those beliefs anymore. Chen gestured to the MPs behind her. Take him. Morrison didn't resist, but as they led him past Maggie, he stopped. You think you've won? You haven't. 20 years from now, there'll be another version of me. Another generation that understands what's being lost, and they'll undo everything you've built. Maggie met his eyes. Maybe. But 20 years from now, there'll also be another generation of women like me. Women who've proven what we can do. Women who've earned their place, and they'll be ready for whatever comes. Morrison held her gaze for a long moment. Then the MPs pulled him away. The base commander stood shakily. "Admiral, I didn't know. The orders looked legitimate. I was just following." "I know, Commander. We'll sort it out later. Right now, I need you to reinstate the training program immediately. Full authority returns to our designated instructors." "Yes, ma'am, of course." Within the hour, the candidates were back in formation. Maggie stood before them, exhausted but unbowed. "You've just witnessed something unprecedented. An attempted shutdown of this program by people who don't want you to succeed. They failed. You're still here. The program continues." She paused. "But I want you to understand something. This won't be the last time someone tries to stop you. There will always be people who believe you don't belong. People who will work to prove that you can't do what you've been trained to do. Your job is to prove them wrong. Every day, every evolution, every mission." Jennifer Wu raised her hand. "Ma'am, what happened to the people who did this?" "They're being arrested as we speak. There will be trials. There will be accountability." Maggie's voice strengthened. "But more importantly, there will be change. The structures that allowed this to happen are being dismantled. The policies that enabled discrimination are being rewritten. For the first time in history, women in special operations will have the full support of the institution." "Is it really over?" Maggie thought about Morrison's words, about the ideology that couldn't be arrested, about the generations of resistance that stretched back beyond living memory. "No," she said honestly. "It's not over. It will never be completely over. But we've won this battle, and we'll win the next one, and the one after that, until winning becomes the expectation, not the exception." The candidates absorbed this in silence. Then Sarah spoke up. "Ma'am, I have a question. Not about the program, about my mother." Every eye turned to her. "You were with her when she died. You've told me what she said. But there's something you haven't told me. Something you've been carrying for 20 years. Sarah's voice was steady, but her eyes glistened. "What really happened that night in Baghdad?" Maggie felt the weight of 2 decades pressing down on her. The secret. The truth she'd never spoken aloud. She looked at the 42 women watching her. At Sarah, who deserved to know. At Chen, who'd trusted her with everything. "The mission was compromised," Maggie said slowly. "Someone had sold our position to the enemy. We knew there was a leak, but we didn't know who." She took a breath. "The night before the operation, I identified the source, one of our local assets. A woman I'd trusted, built a relationship with. She'd been turned by the insurgents months earlier." "Did you report it?" "I should have. Protocol demanded that I report it immediately and abort the mission." Maggie's voice cracked. "But reporting it would have meant delays. The hostages would have been moved. The window would have closed. And I was so sure I could manage it. So sure I could neutralize the threat without compromising the operation." Sarah's face had gone pale. "What did you do?" "I confronted the asset myself. Tried to turn her back. She panicked. Ran to warn the insurgents." Maggie closed her eyes. She didn't make it in time to stop the breach. But she made it in time to trigger the secondary IED, the one that killed your mother. The silence was absolute. If I'd followed protocol, the mission would have been delayed. Rachel would have been reassigned. She'd still be alive. Tears streamed down Maggie's face. "I killed her, Sarah. My arrogance, my certainty that I knew better than the rules. I killed the best friend I ever had." Sarah stood frozen. Her face was a war zone of emotions. Grief, anger, betrayal, and something else. Something Maggie couldn't identify. "Why didn't you tell me before?" "Because I was afraid. Afraid you'd hate me. Afraid you'd blame me. Afraid of losing the only connection I have left to your mother. I should blame you. Yes, you should. Sarah walked slowly toward Maggie. The other candidates held their breath. My mother's letters, Sarah said quietly. She wrote about you constantly. She said you were the most capable operator she'd ever served with. She said you had one flaw, one weakness that would either destroy you or make you unstoppable. What was it? You cared too much about the mission, about your teammates, about the people you were trying to save. She said that caring would either get you killed or make you a legend. Sarah stopped directly in front of Maggie. She didn't blame you for her death. She knew the risks. She chose to be there. She chose to trust me, and I failed her. You didn't fail her. You made a decision in an impossible situation. The decision was wrong, but the intention was right. Sarah reached out and took Maggie's hands. My mother loved you. She wouldn't want me to hate you for trying to save people. Maggie couldn't speak. 20 years of guilt. 20 years of carrying this weight alone. And Rachel's daughter was offering her something she'd never expected. Forgiveness. I don't deserve this. Maybe not, but you need it, and I need to give it. Sarah squeezed her hands. We both need to let her go. They stood there for a long moment, two women bound by loss and love, and a legacy that refused to die. Then Maggie straightened, wiped her eyes, faced the candidates who'd witnessed everything. You just saw something that's never supposed to happen. A commanding officer breaking down, admitting weakness, showing vulnerability. She paused. That's not in any training manual. That's not part of any protocol. But it's part of being human, and that's what we are. Human beings doing impossible things. She walked down the line of candidates. Every one of you will face moments like this. Moments when you have to choose between following the rules and following your heart. Moments when there's no right answer, only less wrong ones. The instructors can teach you tactics, they can teach you techniques, but they can't teach you how to live with the consequences of the choices you make. She stopped at the end of the line. I've lived with my consequences for 20 years. They've shaped me, haunted me, made me who I am. If you complete this program, you'll carry your own consequences. Some of them will be victories. Some will be scars. All of them will be yours. Admiral Chen stepped forward. That's enough for today. Candidates, you're dismissed. Get some rest. Training resumes at 500. The women dispersed slowly, many of them glancing back at Maggie with expressions she couldn't quite read. Sarah lingered. What happens now? Now we finish what we started. The investigation will take months, the trials will take years, but the program continues. You continue. Maggie managed a small smile. Your mother would be proud of you. She'd be proud of both of us. That evening, Maggie returned to the cemetery where Rachel was buried. The setting sun cast long shadows across the headstones. She knelt beside the familiar marker and placed fresh flowers against the stone. I told her Rach, told her everything, and she forgave me. Maggie's voice was thick with emotion. I don't know if I deserve it, but I'm going to try to earn it, every day, for the rest of my life. She touched the carved letters of Rachel's name. Your daughter is going to be a SEAL, the first official one. History books will remember her name, and somewhere in those books, there'll be a footnote about the women who came before, the ones who proved it was possible when everyone said it wasn't. A cool breeze rustled through the grass. I'm not invisible anymore, Rach. I'm not hiding. I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be doing exactly what I'm supposed to do. And I'm going to keep doing it until there's no one left who remembers why it was ever controversial. She stood slowly, her knees protesting the movement. Rest easy, sister. I've got it from here. 6 months later, Sarah Hayes stood at attention while Admiral Victoria Chen pinned the Special Warfare insignia to her uniform. The first woman to earn the trident through official channels. The ceremony was small. No cameras, no press, just the candidates who'd made it through, the instructors who'd trained them, and the families who'd supported them. Maggie stood in the front row wearing her dress uniform for the first time in 20 years. When the ceremony ended, Sarah approached her. You know what my mother wrote in her last letter, the one she sent the day before she died? Tell me. She said, if anything happens to me, find Maggie. She'll teach you how to be unstoppable. Maggie felt the tears coming again. She didn't fight them. Did I? You taught me something better. You taught me how to be human, how to fail and keep going, how to carry the weight of impossible choices. Sarah smiled. How to be a warrior without losing my soul. They embraced. 2 generations of fighters, connected across time and loss and sacrifice. Behind them, the sun was setting over the Pacific. Golden light painted the waves in colors that seemed impossible. Admiral Chen approached. Captain Thornton, there's someone here to see you. Maggie turned. 5 women stood in a row, ranging in age from late 50s to early 70s. Different faces, different lives, but each with the same small trident tattooed on her inner ankle. The surviving members of Operation Siren. They'd come from Seattle, Texas, Ohio, Virginia. The sisterhood reunited for the first time in 20 years. Elena Rodriguez, the doctor who'd saved hundreds of lives in emergency rooms across the country. Patricia Wells, the security consultant who'd protected CEOs and diplomats on 4 continents. Margaret O'Brien, the high school teacher who'd inspired a generation of young women to believe in themselves. And Victoria Chen, the admiral who'd never stopped fighting. They gathered around Maggie in a circle. We watched your testimony, Elena said. Every word. We cried, Patricia added. All of us. Even Chen, though she'll never admit it. We're so proud of you, Margaret said. So proud of what you've done. Chen stepped forward. The program is official now. Fully funded. Fully supported. 3 more classes are scheduled for next year, and every instructor will be vetted against the old guard lists. Their influence is broken. Maggie looked at each of them in turn. The sisters she'd thought she'd lost forever. I couldn't have done this without you, without the foundation we built, without the proof that it was possible. We did it together, Elena said. 30 years ago we proved women could operate at the highest levels. Today you proved that the proof couldn't be destroyed. The legacy continues, Patricia said. Through us, Margaret added. Through them. Chen gestured toward Sarah and the other new graduates. The next generation, the ones who won't have to hide. The 7 women stood together as the sun disappeared below the horizon. 3 generations of warriors, past, present, and future, connected by sacrifice and bound by purpose. Maggie thought about her father, about Rachel, about all the battles fought and the ones still to come. It's not over, she said quietly. There will always be someone who thinks we don't belong, someone who wants to push us back into the shadows. Let them try, Chen said. We'll be ready, Elena added. We'll always be ready, Sarah finished. Maggie looked at her sisters, at Sarah, at the women who would carry this legacy forward long after she was gone, and for the first time in 20 years, she smiled without reservation. They had called her invisible. They had called her weak. They had called her a threat to everything they believed in. They had tried to destroy her, to erase her, to make the world forget she ever existed. They had failed, because Margaret Thornton was never invisible. She was waiting. And when she finally stepped out of the shadows, she didn't just fight back. She changed everything. Some legends are born in glory, others are forged in darkness. But the truest legends are the ones that refuse to die, no matter how hard the world tries to bury them.